If you're using low-quality vinyl windows, there's something you can do to help save time and money over the long run. And that something is using Andersen 100 Series products instead of vinyl. 100 Series products are available at a similar price to vinyl, but made with Fibrex material that's twice as strong and holds up in high heat, even in dark colors. And unlike some other vinyl alternatives, 100 Series products have a smooth and consistent finish. That's why you can trust Andersen 100 Series products to be the smart alternative to vinyl. Learn more at andersenwindows.com/pros. Our next question comes from Will. Greetings from Climate Zone 3, longtime student of the podcast and fairly recent subscriber to FHB because of this podcast. Well, thanks, Will. My home is a 25-year-old brick traditional in South Carolina. I have two questions related to my exterior vinyl double-hung windows. I went outside to clean them and noticed that the sills had been sealed, mostly at the bottom of them. It's been this way for at least 20 years, and I haven't noticed any issues either from the crawl space or inside, like paint bubbling, etc. Is it ever okay to seal the bottoms of windows, or should I completely remove this sealant? I removed a portion, but thought I would double check with you all first. Additionally, if I do remove the existing sealant, should I attempt to seal any small gaps at the rear of the window where the window casing meets the inside of the brick? My second question relates to the top portion of these vinyl windows. The detail on the top of all the front-facing windows is a stucco molding that leaves no gaps at the top of the windows. However, the rear of the home is missing this detail, and there was a 3/4 inch space at the top of the windows below the lintel. I made some custom-fit molding from cypress and placed them in this gap to minimize air and water penetration, along with providing a small aesthetic detail. I'm questioning whether or not I should have done this. Is this okay, or should I remove it? I've attached pictures that may provide some more insight. Thanks again for all you do, and I appreciate the information on the podcast. Okay, so Randy, should we seal the bottom of double-hung window openings?
Typically, no. There are times when if you go to a fully sealed system, you have to. It's the way that they're designed to work. Usually we don't do that. The way that this one's set up though is that if this house is built the way I think it is, it's a wood framed house with a brick veneer on the exterior, right? And there should be a space or a gap between the wood framing and the inside facing of that brick. Depending on how the windows are installed, if they're a flanged window, they're actually probably put in and the brick is worked around it. If it's flangeless, they could be put in later, right? That leaves that gap underneath the window between the framing and the brick, leaves a gap there. That is the window draining into that. If it is it coming out the bottom? If it's doing that, it's been doing that for 25 years and you have no problems, it is what it is. Typically we span that though with a piece of coil stock or some other kind of metal to try to get the water to go to the face of the brick and down rather than going between the brick and the framing. If that's the case, if there's no metal there, sealing it, you're actually allowing the water it's getting stuck between the two and coming out, right? So maybe I would think about opening it, but you really got to know how that thing's assembled before you want to take and do that.
Yeah.
You don't want to be creating more problems. Is now all of a sudden you might be injecting water into that from it's landing on that brick ledge that actually splashes back in there, and you may be making things worse. So it's been that way for 20 years. I'd leave it alone, I think.
Yeah, Randy, I would agree with you on that, and I would also say like the idea of leaving the bottom of a window open is incumbent on that window having been installed a certain way and that sill have been prepped a certain way. So like in an old house, like it's not like all of a sudden just like a good idea to leave the bottom of a window. You might be creating a path for water to go in an old house. You know what I mean? Like that, we leave the bottom of the windows open because we've pitched the sill, we've created a back dam, we've done all these things that are going to send water in one direction. If that's not all in place, seal the bottom of your window.
Yeah.
Right? Because otherwise you're like water's either just sitting there or maybe going towards the interior, and it might be a place where it's getting in. Now, if you have a window that's installed, you're not going to know that, which is the hard part. And that's why it's hard to advise someone in this, an old house, you might not know, but But that's part of that struck me about this question. Like, we got to be really careful. Like, when we make these suggestions about these best practices, the whole thing has to be right.
It depends.
Yeah, it depends, right? The whole system's got to be done right. And yeah, this is how it's being done on new houses right now, often quality new houses, but it's all still pretty new. It wasn't that long ago that we were doing nothing to the sill and sealing all the windows.
Yeah.
I think an IR camera is super helpful in this for diagnosing. Is this a problem or is this not? You can look inside and outside and see what's wet and check after a heavy rain event or wind-driven rain and see what's going on as best you can.
Yeah, if you've got a basement in this home where maybe you have a rim joist that you can actually maybe pull things apart to be able to see the wood there, that might tell you, because that water, if it's going down, if it's not leaving fast enough, it could be being absorbed into the rim joist area where things are getting wet or not, over time. It'll deteriorate that rim joist.
And even if it's not deteriorating, you'll probably see staining, so you'll have an idea.
You're going to see staining on any rim joist on any house that does. I'm serious. So, Randy, you're on the forefront of this presently with your window reinstallation upstairs of your house. What are some of the things we see wrong over and over again with regard to window flashings? I see reverse laps and face sealed systems. What do you see that drives you crazy?
Not following manufacturer's instructions. You got to really understand the products that you're working with, how the manufacturer wants them installed. Now, one thing with my window, when I pulled that old window out, I was expecting to see a bunch of damage. I pulled it out, there wasn't anything. There was no water staining. There was nothing on the sill. There was nothing on the sill. They didn't have tar paper. There was nothing. That, I think, is the exception. I don't think it's very often that you don't see any water staining in that area. Other areas, and this was the east side of my house, so that it doesn't get the driving rains. It's not on the south or west side. Other areas of my house, I did see water staining on. They were all the same way. They were all built the same, and there was water staining on other ones, but no damage. And it's still the best practice to do with the materials that we're dealing with today. We're dealing with OSB. We don't have solid wood sheeting anymore that can take moisture and absorb and release. OSB does not work the same way. So we got to protect those surfaces, and the tapes and the sealants and the some of the other methods that we do to protect that. It's critical. We need to have that. We're not building houses that we did 70 years ago like my house is built.
How are they flashing windows in these concrete printed houses, Brian? Did you see that part? Do they care? How's that work?
The short version of the story is that they have a pre-made concrete windowsill that they put in place, and it's pitched towards the exterior. On top of that, they do a 3-sided buck for the installation. Then they do liquid flash from the buck to the it's a pressure treated buck. They do liquid flash from the buck to the concrete printed wall, and then they do a flanged window installation as usual to that buck. It also has similar to like an any window. It has sort of a little bit of protection above because the buck is set back a little bit from the concrete wall, and then they can do wood trim around it, but they have a really, in terms of aesthetics, what I thought was a really nice detail was this metal flashing that just kind of more modern detail, trimless look that just kind of slipped in behind the concrete. So the concrete just kind of had a nice clean finish at this metal flashing, ran right up to it, and it just kind of slipped behind it a little bit. And it's not flashing. Sorry, that's not the right term. It's just a trim piece. Yeah, it's just a trim piece. And that had a nice kind of seamless look. One thing about these houses is that they definitely have an aesthetic that you're either going to like or you're not going to like, and that's personal preference. The concrete walls they have a look to them. They're beaded and they're finished. It's the finished surface on the interior as well. So they have very few framed walls where they have these concrete walls on the inside. There's lots of curves because they actually can very easily print curves, and it's actually an efficient way for the printer to work. So you're the aesthetic is going to be very personal. People are either going to like the look or they're not. I liked it. I like the curves. It has a real kind of soft quality to it, but certainly traditionalists are certainly probably not going to like the look.
I haven't seen any of these being built in Minnesota yet.
They're coming. They've got plans for some northern climates.
I'd like to see the insulation strategies for
Well,
those. Those would be fun.
I did ask about that, and it's their plan right now is simple. It's kind of akin to the idea of a double stud wall, where they just will adjust the thickness of the wall. By the way, the walls are interestingly, the walls are thermally broken where those cores are. So the cores do not go from the entire. They did not go all the way from the exterior to the interior. They have an air space, so that right now the only insulation they use is this open cell injection foam. They do have plans to try other insulations, but when they do after all the utilities are done, they do the injection foam. It is a thermally broken wall.
Okay.
And so their idea for cold climates is we just make the wall thicker.
Yeah.
The Texas walls are R21. And they're thermally broken, and they just say like we'll just make these walls thicker in colder climates, and that's how we'll solve for that. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I hope if you all have questions about window flashing, concrete houses, or any other subject, you'll write into the podcast email box. We greatly appreciate hearing from you, and it makes the show better.